हरि ओम। ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवम् सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। We are starting the third path of Patanjali Yoga Sutra called Vibhuti Pada. So far, we have learned something about the most vital thing that one needs to think about, and that is mind. If there is one thing in this world that should be kept as the only focus, that is mind. No need to get involved in anything else in this world, but to only think about the mind. And the mind continuously thinks that I am a jiva, I am deha, I am jiva. This is called jiva kalpana. The very fact of our thread of life is I am in this world as a jiva, and this is the single largest wrong or erroneous impression that we carry and spend our life. Sarva kalpana moolam jiva kalpana. We need to understand that world is a kalpana, ideation. We feel the world is real, I am real, and I'm doing realistic things in the real world and getting real pain or sorrow and real happiness. All these things are wrong. World is an illusion, an ideation. The mind that is involved in the world is also an ideation. So what is the first thing that has happened wrong with us? We have seen a rope and we are calling it a snake. Now that snake is presumed to be real, we are preparing ourselves to get rid of the snake and the fear subsequent to the snake, and what to do with the snake, how to deal with the snake, how can I get away from the snake, how can I get involved with the snake. The foundation, the basic principle being most erroneous. This erroneousness is called Brahma, Khyati, or Adhyasa. When A is existing, feeling that B is existing instead of A is Adhyasa. When consciousness or Chaitanya is the only thing existing, which all the scriptures are telling us, Gurudeva is telling us, there is nothing else in this world except Chaitanya. And what is our position? We do not see Chaitanya anywhere, we see the world. That means the scriptures and the Rishis are telling us that it is a rope. Because they say rope everywhere, the true nature, but we see snake everywhere. And currently our position is exactly like the same. We do feel the world is real. We want to get out of this world, the pain, the sorrow, the unhappiness that is existing in this world, sarva dukkha mulakam. But the foundational aspect of this is the mind itself is creating erroneous thing called world. It appears so real that anybody would consider such a statement as a stupid statement. How can you say that the world is not existing when I'm right now talking to some people, they are listening to it, they are understanding it, you are studying the scriptures, all this you mean to say is unreal? And this is where we need to understand the concept of false and unreal. Mind creates a world which continues to be perceived as real till the time the reality dawns upon us. If we take an analogy, we took a crystal or a glass in our hand and started calling it as diamond. And everyone agreed. They took the glass in the hand, they looked up, down, everywhere. They said, yes, it is a diamond. So they continued to presume it to be diamond till the time the diamond came in the hand. Now what happened? In presence of the diamond, glass has been proven to be glass. In absence of diamond, in the absence of knowledge and the realistic experience of the diamond, the glass continued to be called and treated as a diamond by all the people who are concerned. So that means the glass and its concept as it is diamond lasts as long as a real diamond is not there. In the similar manner, the world and its existence is considered to be real by the mind till the time the true nature, the actual reality is not perceived. The time when reality is perceived, unreal appears unreal. To know the reality is to get acquainted with the reality, which is called Purusha Khyati. Prakruti shall continue to be real till the time Purusha Khyati has not dawned. We are immersed in the world, and we are immersed in the world because we have an abnormal structure called mind. Mind is the single largest aberration, and thought is the single largest delusory product. Think about this. A very fundamental understanding of all the margas, whether you go to Jnana Marga or the yoga that we are studying, mind is the single largest aberration, and thought is the single largest delusory product. So anything created by mind and thought is bound to be delusory. Howsoever real it may appear, it will continue to be a delusion. Now comes the question, when I am immersed into this world with my mind and my thought, and both are absurd, then naturally the samsara or the Vishwa, whatever I call it as, is also equally absurd. Then the byproducts are also absurd. The happiness, the sorrow, all these are absurd phenomena. You called a rope a snake, and then you started shivering with fear. The shivering may appear real, but it is absurd because there is no snake. But the thought that snake is there is not leaving me. As long as it doesn't leave me, I shall continue to suffer because of erroneous impression of snake. Similarly, I shall continue to suffer as long as I consider this world to be real, as long as I hold on to the thought and the mind which is absurd or abnormally directed. So what is the first thing that we need to do? The first aspect, the very first thing in sadhana is to know that something is wrong. A person who has lost his way, suppose he doesn't know that he has lost his way, he will continue to lose the way. What is the first thing that should happen to him? He should realize that the way, he has lost the way and he is going in a wrong way. So first thing that a sadhak should understand, that there is something wrong, something amiss, something not right with my mind and my thought. Then only you will verify and cross-check it. So the first stage is swa-anveshan, introspection, to know whether what I do and think and act and whatever it is it right or wrong? If I continue to be angry, greedy, full of desires, I need to sit down and at least cross-check, why am I having desires? Why am I feeling unhappy? What is that makes me sad? What is the stress I am taking? So the first point is to introspect about whether I have lost my road, whether I have lost the way. Once that is done, then we realize that yes, it is the mind which is leading me to a wrong path. And the torch in the light of which I am trying to walk, the light itself is thrown on the wrong road. The light that is thrown is thought. And the operator of that thought is mind. So my mind, whose echo is thought, is something that needs to be checked. If I check the thought, I'm also checking my mind, because mind is the steady projector from which the projection of thoughts keeps coming like an arrow. So if I take care of the thoughts, I'm taking care of the mind. But before that, I must know that I must take care of my thought and my mind. So first what we do is, a person who is fallen into a dirty pond, the first thing that he should realize that he has fallen in a dirty pond. It is not a right place to be at. And then what he will do? He will try to get out of the pond, out of the dirt, and come at a place which is not dirty. So what you do first? You come out of the world which is created wrong way, in a wrong way. So you correct your interaction with the world. Presently, my interaction with the world is based on my erroneous impression about the world. He is mine, he is my uncle, she's my wife. I am a CEO, I have a company, money is needed, investment in share is required. This thinking is based on the fact that everything what is happening is real. If I have to correct myself, then I should start correcting my thoughts so that I extricate myself out of the wrong world. In other words, I will align my thoughts first from a misdirected way to the well-directed way. Agreed. It is the thought which is creating the problem. It is that arrow that is killing, and also the bow that is shooting this arrow. Both needs to be taken care so that there is no further killing or anything of that kind. But before that, before you surrender the bow and the arrow, mind and the thought, first what you do is, at least first ensure that the arrows are not hitting the innocent people. Let it hit the wall. Hitting wall also is not right. So first what you do is, you change the focus of the arrow, change the focus of the thoughts so that it doesn't go in a wrong way. That means first you train the bow and the arrow to shoot at a place which is not going to be harmful to you. This shooting the arrow in well-directed manner so that a wrong direction can be created is nothing else but tuning up our thoughts and the mind while interacting with this world. Although I know this world is not real, although I know this world is not something that I should be really thinking about, but first step is, in this illusory world, till the time I get to a stage where the world really appears as a delusion, it is bound to be truth. It is Sat. Right now it is Sat. So I should take care of it. Only when the knowledge dawns, it will become Asat. Till the time it is not Asat, till the time I am not convinced by my knowledge that this world is unreal, I will have to presume it to be real from the point of view of sadhana, in which my thought and my mind shall be tuned to this world. Tuning of my thoughts and mind is redirecting the thoughts and mind so that it creates less and less commotion coming out of the involvement in this world. I am constantly fighting with my neighbors, and neighbors are coming to fight with me. So it has become an utter chaos. My living has become an utter chaos. So first thing what I should do is, I should have my relationship redefined with my neighbors so that at least there is no further chaotic thing coming from outside. Frankly speaking, I have no business with the neighbors because I'm in my house. However, I am tuned to react in a wrong manner with my neighbors. Similarly, my mind and thought is reacting in a wrong way with this world. I must first correct that. This correction of my mind and thought with the world is done by training the mind and the thought. This retraining of the mind for re-establishing the relationship of mind and thought with this world is done with the help of the first two angas called yama and niyama. So yama and niyama, what it does is it re-establishes mind and the thought and its relationship with the world. A question may come to mind. It is the mind which is single largest aberration. Thought is the single largest delusion. Then why you are again talking about redirecting the thought, redirecting the mind? The beauty of the exercise, spiritual exercise, lies in the fact that the same sword which has created the trouble and which is actually hurting me is initially handled in a very nice manner so that it doesn't hurt me. Only after that I can abandon the sword. It is a stage-wise process. First mistake is getting immersed into the world in a wrong manner. Correct the immersion into this world to the right manner through yama and niyama. Once yama niyama is properly learned, now the world is not going to come to bother you. We don't want neighbors to come and be at our place to fight with us because I have to clean my house. How can I clean my house and make it absolute tip-top unless I'm not disturbed by the neighbors? The world should not come to haunt me. That is actually the single largest problem I have. I want to sit for meditation. I can't. The world pounces on me with the help of my mind and thought. So first thing is a realignment of mind, me, which means mind and thought with the world in a harmonious manner so that the world doesn't come to bother me. This stopping the botheration of world vis-a-vis me by fine-tuning the thoughts is done through yama and niyama. And the Rishis have given us such beautiful solution. What do they say? How many neighbors you have? Sir, I have 1 million neighbors. You will take a lot of time to fight with them and settle things with them and be at peace with them. But I have only 2 neighbors or 10 neighbors. I can handle the count. That is why reduce what you have in your plate as the world. Have least contact with the world. Only to the extent your karma or prarabdha has forced you to. I'm working, I'm father, I'm husband, I'm brother. Restrict it to minimum roles. Do not go out of the way to increase your involvement in this world. You are creating more trouble because the mind and thought will have a much larger area to play. As it is, we are worried about how to control the mind and the thoughts. So maternal uncles, brothers, sons' marriage, I have to go. Stop it. Social media, WhatsApp, television, parties, pub, get-togethers, conferences, too many tirtha kshetras, too much of spiritual gathering. Avoid. no networking, no need to become upwardly mobile. We are trying to be stationary, don't be mobile. So reducing, that is why the Rishis and Munis, Gurudev, what he did, moment he realized what is what, he left this, he left Delhi, he left Rishikesh, he went to Uttar Kashi. How much was the interaction with the world? Only his colleagues and Gurudev, his Gurudev. What is the result? Less interaction with the world, less things on the platter to deal with. But mind well, if you are dealing with 1,000 things, vis-a-vis you are dealing now with 10 things, dealing with 10 is better. But if the intensity of these 10 things is larger, then it can even be more than the 1,000 things. So qualitative and quantitative, both aspects are important. How do I deal with this qualitatively? To deal qualitative aspect of the interaction with this false world, yama niyama is used. Quantitative aspect we can do on our own. Mind wants to go there and see the first movie and then want to go to the mall and then have the evening snacks there only and stroll in the mall and then go to the garden. All this can be stopped. But even sitting in the home, the mind can go to the mall. So the quantitative aspect, we manage ourselves. The qualitative aspect requires yama niyama to come into the picture. Once we tune and train our thoughts and the mind, then we start the next step. The next step now is, now that my mind, my thought and my minds are not going into the erroneous manner in this world, now that my child is not going always out and ready to sit for the study, now that my child has lost the interest in the outside playing and going to the football or cricket, now that he's back in home, now I can prepare for his study. So the next stage after practicing yama niyama, whereby mind thoughts have stopped wrongly interacting with the world, they now can be brought to the next stage where we learn to sit at one place and start regulating our breathing, because now the mind is free to focus on a new thing. So far it focused on the world. Now the mind is focusing on the breathing. To focus on the breathing, I need to sit at one place, because if I move, again the mind will waver. So I have asana, sthira sukhasana, take care of my breathing, because now the mind has been given a new vocation to watch the breathing. While watching the breathing and its movements, I realize that my thoughts are getting further controlled. Also, in this manner, because my thoughts are getting concentrated on the breathing, I simultaneously learn the art of bringing the scattered thoughts at one area. So far, my thoughts were running. Am I going into the world? Actually, the thoughts went into the world, then the body went into the world and created a lot of chaos there. Now the body has been brought back and kept at one place called asana. Thoughts have been brought back and now employed into the breathing called pranayama. When these two are established, asana and pranayama, sitting at one place for a prolonged time, and the focus on the body, on the breathing. When the focus is on the breathing, it can't be on the body. So how to forget the focus on the body? by focusing in such a manner that the posture does not give me an idea that I have a body. Because now my thoughts are bound to be only on breathing. While focusing on breathing, focus on world is anyway lost. Body should also be lost. That practice is asanam. Asanam gives me an ability to forget my body while sitting. Only when I forget my body, then only I can focus on the breath. So asana is first because that is the physical disturbances. Then comes to the breathing to be watched, pranayama, which naturally looks after the mental disturbances. Focusing on the breath, pranayama, naturally excludes the emotional disturbances. So emotional disturbance of the mind and the physical disturbance of the body, both are tackled by asana and pranayama. Now what happens? Even when I'm sitting in asana and pranayama, even though I have forgotten about the outside world, suddenly a thought comes about the outside world. Now, this thought is at a superficial level. It is at the conscious mind level. Very nicely, I'm sitting in asana, focusing on my breathing. Here goes my breath in, out. Suddenly, the mind thinks about office. What happened? Another thought came from about the outside world in the mind. So the arrows will be thrown by the word on the plane of the mind without our knowledge. So what do? I'm sitting in asana, doing the pranayama with my hands raised to stop the arrows coming from the world to me. So whatever stimulus comes from the world, whenever the mind tries to receive that stimulus of the world, I need to stop it. A continuous, sustained effort to stop minds and thoughts involvement into the external world. After I have learned yama niyama, naturally such disturbances are not going to be too many. But we don't want even a single thought to come of the external world when I am on the way of pranayama. So asana, body is not at all felt. I can sit in this position for a longer duration, 3 hours, 4 hours, focusing completely on the breath and stopping absolute any connection with the external world has to be stopped. Mind well, we have closed our eyes, ears, nose, skin. So it is not the external stimuli will come through indriyas. They will come through the mind. The sixth indriya. That has to be stopped with great effort. That is called stopping the ahar of the indriyas. So doing what is called prati ahar, not letting indriyas have their food which comes from the external world. Pratyahar. So I'm preferably sitting in a quiet place, a room earmarked for my meditation or sadhana. I'm not having too much of food in my stomach, especially at a time when everything is silent around. The chitta vritti is ullasit at the Brahma Muhurta time. So early in the morning, I'm sitting on a soft cloth because nothing should make me aware of my body. I'm in best of my health. I have no issues coming from the body. I'm not sick. Now I'm sitting at my place of solitude and trying to see that my breathing goes in and goes out as regulated. No thought is coming about anything from outside. The breathing is being watched by me. And suddenly I realize a thought is coming from one corner. I stop the thought there, bring back the mind on the breathing. Now the breathing is going on. Again, another thought has come. I stop that thought. This is practice of pratyahara. After a couple of months, days, or years of practice, the pratyahara will start reaching towards perfection. And the sign for this is you go in for meditation in the morning at about 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And when you come out of that meditation room, you realize, oh my God, it is 8 o'clock, 4 hours passed. I did not feel the time. That is a sign that the pratyahara is nearing perfection. Now that the pratyahara is nearing perfection, once I'm able to completely switch off the external thoughts coming into the mind, I am able to sit at one place for a longer time. I am able to breathe deep enough, followed by Rechaka, and then mastering the Kumbhaka. First, stretching the breathing to its maximum, and then slowly increasing stoppage of breathing. So first, perfection for the Puraka and the Rechaka, and then a perfected Puraka and Rechaka needs to be reduced to allow Kumbhaka to expand. Now the body is not moving. The chest is not expanding because you're not breathing. With this, it is helping me to stabilize my mind. Nothing from outside is coming in. Now I realize that my mind and my thoughts are coming at one place. They are retracting from the world, but I cannot hold them. I need to employ them at some place. All right. The water that was scattered everywhere has been now collected at one place, but I must keep it somewhere. The sun rays scattered all around have been brought back at the central place, but now that needs to be placed at some point. And then the need of such collected energy and employing that mind now, because mind has extricated itself from the world, it has extricated itself from the body. Now it needs a stage further, that is employing the mind at one particular place. The place is called Desha, mind is called Chitta, and then putting the mind or the Chitta into one place called Desha is called Dharana. So the next Anga that we will be studying is called a Dharana. Now, what is the difference between Dharana and Pratyahara? Mind well, Pratyahara is stopping the external stimuli coming and stimulating the mind through the Indriyas, including the mind. The thought about the outside world which I have in my mind, it will come. Let us take example. On that particular day, I had a fantastic interaction or fantastic uh, interaction with a person, or I had a very sweet, nice thing which I ate. This thought comes suddenly, springs like a wildfire when I'm trying to concentrate. Now I need to stop that. This is pratyahara. Pratyahara is indriya marfat, through the indriyas. The previously experienced thing is coming to my mind again to bother me. But this is not from the remote experience. This is from the recent experience, current experience. Then what is dharana? Dharana is such unemployed thought. Unemployed thought meaning thoughts which are not going outside. When they are brought inside, they need to be kept somewhere. And initially, it needs to be kept somewhere. You need a place to deposit the thoughts which have come from outside, and you have brought it back with great effort. After pratyahara, the thoughts and the mind, that is vritti, needs to be placed, deposited at one place. That one place, deposition of such thoughts is called dharana. Dharana is an area. Dharana is not a point. Dharana happens on an area. That is why it is called desha. Desha bandha chittasya dharana. The sutra, first sutra of Vibhuti-pada is desha bandha chittasya dharana. What is a desha? Some area. Why some area? Because the thoughts have been brought back from outside. They are bound to go again back there, back into this world. We don't let them go back. Then what do? We allow them to do the movement, but in a certain area. We have a naughty child at home who is constantly going outside, out of the house. We call them and say that stay, sit there at one place. Sit there at one place means you move, but only in that place. Similarly, the thoughts are brought into a desha. Now, where can this desha be? This desh can be outside or inside. What do you mean by inside? Nabhi chakre, at the Nabhi navel level, there is a Manipura chakra. If you are able to visualize, see, this desh is to be visualized and the mind is to be brought there. If your power of visualization is strong, then you can either visualize it at navel level called Nabhi chakra or Hrudaya Pundarika. Hrudaya Pundarika, that is a heart level which is on the right side. Again, it is imagination, visualization. Murdhni Jyotishi, at the head, think of a flame. Or in Hrudaya, you can think of Angushta Matra Jyoti, a flame. What you are doing? You are imagining the flame, visualizing the flame, and trying to put the thoughts only in that area. You are allowed to have those thoughts into the area of that particular flame. So it could be Nabhi Chakra, it could be Hrud Pandarika, or in the heart Angushta Matra Jyoti, or Murdhni Jyotishi in the Shiro Bhag as the flame in the head, or Nasikagra, Jivhagra, tip of the tongue. Ityam eva adishu. These are all adishu desheshu, in the desha, saptami, of Nasikagre, Jivhagre, Murdhni Jyotishi, Nabhi Chakre, Hrud Pundarika, and You can also have it on the outside on the Ishtadeva Murti. Those who do not have power of visualization can take help of a Murti, or one who has a power of visualization can close the eyes and then put the imagination at the best to visualize. But the only condition is whatever you visualize, that Pradesha, Nabhichakra, Dhrutpundarika, Murdni Jyotishi, Nasikagra, Jivvagra, whatever it is, be at that Desha only, do not move. Sometimes Nabhi Chakra, sometimes no. Whatever Pradesha you have selected, just focus on that. Focus means bring the mind and thought only to that area. Now what happens? Now the mind starts thinking about that particular Pradesha itself. Now we are coming to a very subtle definition of dharana. Mind well, supposing I am seeing a Jyoti at any place, Nabhi Chakra or Murdni Jyotishi in mind, or Nasagra, I'm trying to, Nasikagre, I'm trying to say focus. When you focus on Nasikagre, you get this area in your visualized area. Or when I say on my Nabhi Chakra, a chakra means I normally get a visualization of a brilliant, illuminous chakra, or something like what the Lord Krishna is holding. Sudarshana Chakra, whatever. Now what happens is, when I am focusing on that chakra, my mind goes deeper into it. And it starts seeing the properties of the chakra. It starts seeing the properties of the Jyoti. Oh, the Jyoti is reddish, less reddish at the top, dark red at the center. It has a particular shape. It is moving here and there. Mind well, dharana is not to focus on the qualities of what you are focusing. This is very important. Desha bandhana doesn't mean you are trying to focus on Roop Gunadi of the Dheya Padartha. Your Dheya Padartha is a Jyoti, a flame. But your mind should not focus on the qualities of the flame. It's a very subtle difference, because dharana is not done unless you have siddha, asana and pranayama. Imagine you are coming to dharana after perfecting asana and pranayama and pratyahara. There is a power you have. At this stage, you are simply bringing the vrittis at that desha or at that area. Take an example. There is a murti of Vishnu in front of you, Narayana in front of you. Now you know your mind and thought has come to that particular idol of Narayana. Immediately the mind will start looking towards, oh, Narayana, a beautiful countenance, the face, the radiance, his four hands. No, 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 no. You went in the wrong direction. Just vritti sarupya with Narayana, abstract entity called Narayana. We always say, sometimes in our regular experience in this world, we say that my mind was vacant. Sometimes we think about a particular thing, but we do not think about any particulars of that thing. It happens. We have had this experience. We call it, he was looking into Shunya. Shunya means things were there. Vritti went there, but did not go into the details of the gunas, the qualitative aspect or the shape. So nama rupatmaka, rupa gunatmakata is not the subject of dharana. It is simply extending the vritti to that area. So when we try to focus on this Murdni Jyotishi or anything, initially we do get the shape and the guna of that particular dheya padartha or the focus. But very soon the qualities, the rupa guna of that dheya padartha should be left out. And this is a practice, because our aim is not to make the mind expert in focusing, but to kill the mind. Our aim is to stop the chitta vritti nirodha. We cannot forget the first sutra. We do not want our chitta vritti to go anywhere. We just want them to be steady, means to die out. For that, we are learning to first focus it at one place. But if it starts focusing on the guna and the rupa of that particular dheya padartha, then the dharana will not be sufficient. Dharana is to blend the vritti with the dheya padartha. Because moment you say nama, rupa and guna of that particular dheya padartha, we are strongly focusing on me as the observer and dheya padartha as the observed. The object is to obliterate the observer and the observed thing. That is why observation should not distinctly create these entities. Otherwise, what will happen? You as an observer concept will become strong. We don't want it to become strong. We want an observer status to slowly dissolve in the observed. When will you be distinctly aware of anything? When you think of that thing as separate from me by studying its nama, rupa, guna. So we are not trying to go backward, we have to go forward. So that is why in dharana, confinement of the mind and the thought within the limited area called desha, without getting the vritti focused on the rupa gunadi aspect of the dheya padartha. This is precisely described by Vijnana Bhikshu Maharaj as vritti matrena. That is why, what is the sutra here? Vritti matrena. Vritti matrena natu dheya kalpaneyatyartha tena dhyanadi vyavrittihi. Meditation, which is actually dhyana, which gets preceded by dharana. Dharana gets converted into dhyanam later on. But dharana itself is a stage whereby we focus our mind and thought on a limited area called desha. We bind it there, but while binding, we do not let the mind and the thought think about the nama, rupa, guna of that particular thing. Initially, it goes through that stage. Krishna Tattva and Krishna as color, nama, rupa, chaturbhuja, these are different things. One is tangible aspect, one is intangible, abstract aspect. The abstract aspect is more important in dharana. Now comes the question. In case of our doing asana and pranayama, we were practicing pratyahara, we were stopping the disturbances coming from the world through the indriyas. What about dharana? Dharana also gets disturbances. But a very subtle difference between the disturbances in dharana is different than disturbances in pratyahara. In pratyahara, it is the experiences of the world that is constantly trying to pounce upon you. While in dharana, the disturbances are coming from subconscious mind. First of all, we are not at all in touch with subconscious mind normally. Now that you have mastered the asana and pranayama and pratyahara, the subconscious mind becomes very active. What is there in subconscious mind? Subconscious mind is like deep ocean. When you are in the ocean, The waves create the disturbances, that is pratyahara. But when you go down, the waves are not disturbing you. What is disturbing you is the smaller turmoils that are happening at the deep part of the ocean. Similarly, in the deeper mind, the subconscious mind, we have what is called as the gist of samskaras lying there in the hidden form, which now starts springing up. The disturbances of dharana are pretty strong. Something somewhat observed, experienced way back in the childhood, which has remained in the form of some reactive pattern, which was lying submerged so far. Why was it lying submerged in subconscious mind? Because the conscious mind was so busy with other things. When you are in an accident, suddenly the accident happens and you are completely baffled that I'm caught with an accident. Oh my God, I'm alive or I'm dead or what is happening? So what is happening? The mind is focusing on accident ho gaya. Something happened. After that 1 hour, you realize that, oh my God, there is a small wound also at the great toe. Now that wound at the great toe did not come to the notice in the beginning because you're overwhelmed by the bigger aspect called accident. Now that you're sitting quietly, you've been to the hospital and watching everything, you realize, I've got some kind of impact also at my back. It is hurting here. It was hurting earlier also, but you could not pay attention because your attention was at some other thing. In dharana, attention of the world is over. Now the attention of the smaller but deep penetrating samskaras will start coming up. And mind well, it is quite a painful process. Each of these samskaras are to be completely weeded out. When you are cleaning the slate, you can just take a cloth and just clean the slate. The writing will be completely obliterated, fine. But still the impressions of the writing will be there. For that you require a wet cloth and you have to scrub little with force. Just wiping it with a cloth, pratyahara. Deep cleaning it with the force to reduce those smaller impressions so that the complete slate becomes clean. And what is after all yoga? Purging the mind of all its samskaras is yoga. Whatever wrongly accumulated over the period of many births has to be wiped out. And then it is to be ensured that no new writings come on it. Two aspects are there. No new writing can come is practiced in samadhi. And removal of the writings that are done so far is done up to dharana. So bringing the mind and keeping it on a limited area or called desha. In that, you will be disturbed by vertical movement from subconscious mind to the conscious mind. Pratyahara is from outside to inside. Dharana is from down below to upwards. Gurgling, as they call it in English, gurgling of samskaras, coming from the deep recesses of mind. That is practice of dharana. And when we are able to stop the movement of things coming from subconscious mind in dharana, then what happens is that the mind or the vritti that is focused on that desha slowly becomes stronger and stronger, and the vritti starts staying in the dheya padartha to an extent that the vritti is coming from me as a meditator, flowing into the dheya padartha, touching the dheya padartha, and again coming to me. This is what happens in dharana, but slowly the flow gets more and more stronger towards the dheya padartha, and the flow from me starts becoming less and less, and then it disconnects from me and gets completely into the dheya padartha. The observer or the subject is gone, only the object remains. Since the observer is gone, observation is gone, observed is gone, that is dhyana, meditation. Complete transference of consciousness from one point to the other. When it is a two-way flow, dharana is happening. When outside things are disturbing the flow, pratyahara is happening. So pratyahara is stopping the outward to inward movement of disturbances. Dharana is stopping the downward to upward movement of disturbances from subconscious mind. And dhyana is no disturbances at all, because the one who can feel the disturbance, the source is gone into the dheya padartha. That is why the observer is dead. Observation automatically dries off. Observed no more remains. Then what remains?
Hari Om, Sanjay ji, you've gone muted.
Am I audible?
Yeah, it's okay to us.
So the dharana, dhyana, samadhi, these three needs to be separated properly. Dharana is stopping the disturbances that is coming from the ocean bottom. Dhyana is focusing only continuously on one thing. So in dharana, what you are doing, you're still struggling. So suppose point A is there, you want to focus. You are simultaneously trying to push B and C. That is dharana. When you don't need to push B and C and you're only on A, dhyana, and you're so much on A that you are gone, only A is remaining, dhyana, samadhi. Dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Up to pratyahara, outside things. Dharana in an area, simultaneously stopping anything that is coming from below. Dhyana, continuous flow only into the dheya padartha. So much flow that the flowing from the observer dries off, and only the object remains, samadhi. So this is how the process has been described of antaranga sadhana. We are going to see these three together, and also going to see what great miracles happen called siddhi, how they come, what are the types of siddhis, what a yogi can do is a subject of Vibhuti-pada, which we shall see in detail later on. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. And we'll open up for questions.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji, Rajendran here. Hello. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, we can put the whole thing in this way because it seems to be quite complex. Suppose I have a car and the car is called mind, and I don't know how to drive, and I drive it and make accidents here and there. Then finally, a guru, a master teaches me how to drive, and then I am not making any accidents. So I am doing that niyama and learning the driving, and he brings me to a particular area which is a safe area that is called dharana. There you don't make much accidents, but still there are some troubles. Finally, I have to give up. I have to abandon my vehicle when I reach to the stage, say dhyanam. Is it correct? Then further we go forward.
That is correct. The idea is to abandon the vehicle because it is the vehicle that has created the journey and we don't want this journey. So the analogy is correct. The only thing is expecting right from the beginning guru to come and help you. It's something that we need to understand a little bit more. A guru in its real capacity comes when the problem is genuine. So the one whose car is constantly going and banging everywhere, and if he expects the guru to come and put it in right place, it doesn't happen. What guru that time says is only one statement: keep reading Bhagavad Gita, keep thinking right. So he gives a general advice. Only the disciple who is at a higher level, whose driving has become perfect, Yamaniyamas have done, and now he's finding it difficult to abandon the car. That is the time the Guru Tattva comes in the denser form. That is why for Chinmayananda, Tapovan Maharaj was the Guru and he was the Shishya, but the difficulties that they tackled together was at a very high level. We are talking about the different levels of samadhi issues. Gurudeva's concentration power was powerful right in the childhood because he was a person who was practicing dharana in his early life. So he was here for the last phase of the journey. As far as we are concerned, we are still on the way. So we shall be taking the cues from the advices given by the gurus, but enormous amount of self-effort is required from us at this stage. The self-effort becomes less and less at a higher level because guru takes more and more effort there. At the beginning, our burden is higher. At the later stage, guru takes the whole burden at the last stage. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji. You have mentioned about, we are studying about this pratyahara, dharana, and dhyana. And in most of the time, what happens to me is that when I reach to the dharana, this practicing meditation, in the, pratyahara, we can control. And when suddenly the dharana stage, as you mentioned, some prior incidents in the childhood is just popping up. And from that, I cannot get detached for some time.
Yes.
Is there any other method you can suggest to get rid of such things?
The very fact that when we practice Yama Niyama, we are indirectly practicing how to stop external factors influencing our mind. Yama and Niyama is nothing else but a practice of dissociating ourselves from the external world. When that Yama Niyama goes towards perfection, Pratyahara automatically starts coming into the picture. As far as dharana disturbances are concerned, which are coming from subconscious mind, they are so painful. Removing them is so painful that if we read the biography of J. Krishnamurti, when this process of extracting the sanskaras of past births happened to him, It was such a painful procedure for almost 3 to 4 days, day and night. He was rolling on the ground and wincing with the pain, constantly calling Jagannatha. Now, what was happening was, of course, it is one of the rare mechanisms the way it happens, and it happened without a guru to him. So in that case, taking out the sanskaras is not an easy thing. So in dharana, if such disturbances are coming, then continuing and sustaining the meditation is the way forward. However, if pratyahara is mastered, then the person is a very high yogi. Yama niyama itself are something miles away from us. Doing pratyahara, which we call as pratyahara, is a very superficial way of calling it pratyahara. The real pratyahara is completely different. Are we able to sit at one place and simply forget ourselves for 4 hours? Then perhaps I have this pratyahara. In fact, when we sit for meditation, we are completely aware that I am sitting in meditation. I am also aware of so many things. I'll give an example. We are listening to the satsanga. Simultaneously, we are aware of our next appointments. We are driving a car, but we are thinking about our home. A doctor is performing a surgery, but in the mind he is thinking about going to the bank after the surgery is over. How this is happening? This is happening because the attention is divided between what you are doing, and rest of the attention is given to remembering other things. So this is called as content of the mind are divided into different things. All the contents of the mind have to be brought at one point. That is called pratyaya. We are going to see it in the next class. What is pratyaya? So that is why dharana is a very high stage of meditation. One cannot think of meditation. We are all studying meditation because it is a part of Yoga Sutra. But first thing first, a person can think of marathon running only when he has started actually making his body robust so that he can undertake the marathon or running itself. So unless yama niyamas are practiced, there is no question of doing anything forward. Asanas, we do not have asana capacity. Pranayama, we are nowhere close to it. So that is why first thing first. This is just a kaleidoscope of learning. Hari Om.
Sanjay ji, when you mentioned about this pratyaya, often this pratyaya happens, when you are in a remote places like Uttarakashi or Himalaya areas and all. Then you are, I don't know, suddenly you are cut off from everything, family, everything. You don't even remember all those things. Is it due to the environment you are into it, or is it because of the particular divine power present over there?
Because of the samskara. Why Himalayas are only called beautiful by our mind and not the desert? It is samskara. For that matter, beauty is everywhere. It doesn't happen that way because our past samskaras have created an impression about what is good and what is bad. So that is why whenever we go to such a place, our chitta vritti ullhasitata, the whole chitta vritti become ulhasapurna, and that is why I feel it is good because we have applied goodness to that kind of situation. Of course, we are into such situation, for a moment, a split second, you get a feeling that you are focused on what is around. Mind well, every happiness that you enjoy is nothing else but concentration. Happiness is the echo of concentration. Whenever you are happy, you have concentrated. If you are not concentrated, you will not be. So at these places, suddenly, because you forget other things, means you are concentrating. Forgetting other things itself is a concentration. Because you are concentrating, you feel good. In Himalayas, I feel good. Good because you are able to concentrate. And mind well, this is one minuscule percentage of the concentration that we are talking in this particular Yoga Shastra. That is why yogis are in the happy state because they are constantly in concentration. That is why they are not getting food. They are having, weather is not conducive very hot doesn't matter to them because they're able to concentrate on his happiness. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Beautifully explained. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji. Firstly, thank you so much. For a long time, I was not so clear on the subtle distinction between Pratyahar, Dharana, and Dhyan. My question is, I just needed some more clarification on when you mentioned Dhyana, continuous flow into the Deha Padarthi, right? Just a little explanation. Did I get that right or wrong? Sorry.
Not Deha, Dheya.
Deh. Okay. Dheha. Okay.
Dheya is goal. See, the difference is, let us think like this. Just an analogy. It's not a proper analogy, but you are thinking about Lord Krishna. Now I have two choices. When I think about Lord Krishna, I should not be thinking about Lord Rama. Otherwise, mind will get divided between Krishna and Rama. So, to concentrate on Lord Krishna, simultaneously I'm remembering Rama and I'm trying to stop Rama to come in my mind's purview. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to simultaneously forget Rama and remember Krishna. When you do this simultaneity of two things, you are doing dharana. When I have forgotten Rama and only remembering Krishna, you are doing dhyan. Channel consciousness on dheya padartha continuously like taila dharavat, like the flow of oil, only in one direction. That is dhyana. Dharana is stopping other disturbances and concentrating on the dheya. So two things are happening. Stopping of something, doing of something. That is dharana. So dharana and dhyan, the difference is in dhyana, there is nothing except the dheya padartha, the dhyata, the meditator, the object of meditation and the act of meditation. There is nothing else. In dharana, object of meditation is also there and object of non-meditation to be removed. Simultaneously, that effort is going on. That is the difference between dharana and dhyana. Hari Om.
One allied thing. So the observer or the vehicle that we abandon is at samadhi stage, right?
What happens is when dhyana continues for a longer period without the knowledge, without any effort. In fact, we are going to come to that sutra in which it is said that it is the yoga which propels for further yoga. So that means when dhyana is being done, slowly, slowly, slowly in dhyana, a point comes when you stop realizing that you are existing because your consciousness is transferred into the dheya padartha. At that point of time, since you are not on the scene, imagine a painter is doing a painting, and after some time the painter is absent, only the painting has remained. That is samadhi. In that situation, the painting loses the significance because the painter is not there. So this is what happens in samadhi. And when they are in samadhi, that time, forget about the world, the body, there's nothing. That's why in Thousand Island Park, when Swami Vivekananda Maharaj went outside and saw beautiful tall trees, sat below that and told the lady disciples that what a nice place, let's meditate. And such a great yogi he was, he said that and went into meditation, and then there was torrential rain falling. These ladies tried to put an umbrella on his head, but he was sitting like a log. Then they took their fingers close to his nostrils and they saw perhaps he's not breathing because he was doing kumbhaka. And then what happened? They got completely frightened that maybe Swamiji is dead because it's been 2 hours. They ran helter-skelter. They called more people. By the time other disciples came, Swamiji came out of this thing and he said, what happened? This is what is called samadhi. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Just one thing, like you mentioned here, in the, that you're not supposed to focus on the qualities. Now, I just wonder initially whether you do Vipassana or you do other, you focus on the coolness of the breath or you focus on, sensation. So are those preparatory stages to build the concentration?
Absolutely. Absolutely preparatory. These are very, very preparatory. You are into Nama Rupatmak, Nama Gunatmak. Now, Bhagavad Gita, why Bhagavan was saying that Saguna Puja Rajuna is far easier. Nirguna, very few people are able to achieve.
Yes.
So we to Saguna to Nirguna. So we have to go initially like that. What we do to a child when he is always trying to eat something here and there, we say, okay, eat chocolate only, don't eat bad things, eat healthy thing. What you are trying to tell him there is no need for you to eat. But we first go through the route of telling him to eat proper and then saying that don't eat. So it's the same thing. Preparatory stage. Hari.
So Deha is place, and when you said Deha Padarthi, what is the exact meaning of that? Sorry, I couldn't.
Dheya, D-H-A-Y-E, Dheya, the and ya. Dheya, not Deha. Dheya means the focus. You are focusing on what is your Dheya Padartha. For example, Dheya Padartha could be Nastikagra, the tip of the nose, tip of the tongue, the Jyoti flame, or the Jyoti on the right side of the heart, which is called a Rudra at this place, at the heart place, Nabhi Chakra. These are Dheya Pradesha. So first is Dheya Pradesha. Then in Dheya Pradesha, when you start focusing in the Dheya Pradesha further down, then you don't anything specific there, but your point comes into the picture. It is an imaginary point. You're actually, the Bindu is not into some kind of shape or a rupa, but it is becoming sharper and focus is becoming deeper and sharper because you are now on the way towards Jnana and slowly going further towards Samadhi. Hari.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji, if there is no other questions, we can conclude. But I have one small question. With respect to this, we have heard many number of hours of sleep, 8 hours, 6 hours, and for Gurudeva just 4 hours. But what do you suggest for us to have? The problem with me is that I am able to get up, but once I sit, close my eyes, then again I feel like sleeping. So
called Nidra. There's Pratibandha in Dhyana. Nidra is one of them. So it is not an exception. It happens to many advanced yogis also. But what is important to know is, first is that the normal quota of the sleep required for an individual has to be completely fulfilled. Simply getting up at 4 will not work. First, you have to have a proper required sleep. How much sleep you requires, even the modern medical science tells you that the number of hours of sleep is directly proportional to the quantum of thinking you do, because 22% of the oxygen of the body and the energy is utilized by the brain. So brain means thinking. Thinking means neuronal activity, firing of neurons. So if you think less, what think less means? If you are less stressed, naturally your need for the sleep goes down. So there are two types of wastes that are found, waste products formed in the body. The mind, the thinking leads to formation of waste product, which was a discovery that was made by a neuroscientist about 10 years back, that in the sleep there is a clearance of wastage from the limbic system or the ventricular system of the brain. Through the cerebrospinal fluid, the dead cells are brought out. Now for that you require sleep. And second is the other systems, which is basically the gastrointestinal system, the circulatory system. If they are under too much of pressure, for example, your weight is 90 kilos instead of 70 kilos. What happens? The heart has to work extra for that additional 20 kilos. That keeps it working for a longer time. Longer the heart works, you need more recuperative time, sleep is more. If you're taken too much of food, now the digestion has to be done. The blood flow gets directed towards digestion. you need more sleep, and it is also a disturbed sleep. So a yogi should have light diet, sattvic ahar, less stressful thinking, less connection with the world. Naturally, the number of hours of sleep come down. Now, Gurudeva was completely disconnected from the world as far as the stressful aspect was concerned. So a yogi of Gurudeva's order, 1 or 2 hours are enough to freshen up the brain as well as the body, because there is nothing much to be cleared. There is no stress. There are no negative feelings. There are no ill feelings. There is no brooding. There is no stressful thought. So that is why initially we have to observe our ahara, vihara, and vichar. This will reduce the sleep. Then you will feel good. You can get up at 3:30, and because your quota of sleep is complete, the ability to fall asleep will come down. However, concentration does have that particular pratibandha called nidra. It can be overcome slowly by practice. Hari.
So one last thing is Hriday Pundariksha, when they say right side, what is this? Can you just explain that? Because
see, the heart is normally at the left side according to medical sciences, but the scriptures tell us that the place of the Chaitanya is all over the body. But as a regulator of all the consciousness of the entire body, some central focus is imagined, which is called as Rud or Rudaya. Now that Rud is usually, as Kathopanishad also mentions, it is taken on the right side of the chest. It is in the form of a Angushta Matra. Angushta Matra means like a thumb in the flame form, because it is Chaitanya, Prakasha, Purna. So this is again a visualization. Who visualized it? The yogi in his higher state of samadhi, they have visualized this look. So we consider that as a visualizable location and start focusing on that. In any case, we want one point to focus. So why not to take the possible point? So that is why it is called Rudaya, that is Rud. Pundarika means like a lotus with a flame. That's why in Hatha Yoga, they will call it as Angushta Matra Jyoti. They ask you to focus on that. But usually it is considered right side of the chest, not the regular heart which is there on the left side of the chest. Hari Om.